What's up, guys? It's New, and we got a Path of Exile 1 event coming our way. Yes, I'm going to be playing it. Legacy of Phrecia. You know, I have to admit, I really wasn't that excited to play this new event, but this ascendancy came across the table, and I just knew I had to be a part of it. And I know what you're thinking. Wow, it's new. Projectiles. You don't say. Must be a bow build in the making? No. So don't freak out. I'm not going to play bow build. I'm going to play Frost Blades. Let me explain why that is. You know what, let's take you guys all the way back to Total League, when I played my very first melee build of all time in Path of Exile. It was Lightning Strike, as you can see. Not a concoction build, not a bow build. And you know what, it was a lot of fun. This was the ghosting meta, it served its purpose well. But kind of funny that it so happened to be the league right before they buffed Lightning Strike like crazy. It was also the league right after they destroyed Vengeance Cascade, so no return projectiles, you gotta use the gem. And it was a couple leagues before they replaced the rather bland Raider Ascendancy with the Warden, which would have made it a whole lot better as well. Just before leaving my time with that build, I experimented a little bit with Frostblade, never even recorded it, and I ultimately left that experience kind of torn on the two. Vaal Lightning Strike itself was stronger, but Frostblade definitely had better clear and had better potential, and I wasn't even aware yet at the time of this little amulet right here, Fury Valve, which happens to be way, way better with Frostblades. I'm told from other Frostblade users, it is an absolute godsend on clear. Just creates so many projectiles, make your head spin how many projectiles is created with this amulet. Many people still don't know how it works. Basically, it bakes in whatever number of projectiles the gem itself says, which in the case of, you know, most projectiles, like Lightning Arrow, for example, 1. In the case of Lightning Strike, I believe it's 4. Things like Ice Spear would have 2. But Frost Blades, if you counted them, has 10, potentially more with quality. 10 is a good number. So even if it converts the remaining additional projectiles into splits, that's fine. Even if it spreads them out randomly, 10 is still a good number. Definitely a lot better than 1, 2, or 4. The build also featured Paradoxica, which is a very specialized sword, 1 veiled prefix, 1 veiled suffix, and 100% chance to do double damage. Scales tremendously well in some ways, but not very well in other ways. The ways it doesn't scale particularly well is flat damage, because it just doesn't have very much. It also has terrible baseline crits, 6.5% chance, and you're usually not going to have a crit roll as one of your suffixes. And then it also doesn't take any advantage of double damage because it already has 100%. It does scale, however, pretty well for percent fizz gained as additional damage. One of the things I absolutely loved about the build, which actually began as an explosive concoction pathfinder, I believe, before switching over to Raider, I discovered Smite, and Vaal Smite offered a lot of power, especially in the event that you don't have much flat damage to begin with. Combined with Innervate, Vaal Smite and Innervate together at level 20 offer almost 500 maximum lightning damage, which can absolutely make up for some of the shortcomings in flat damage. And it's pretty awesome the fact that both Vaal Smite and Innervate both last exactly 8 seconds. It so happens one of the best ways to make up for flat damage shortcomings in your build is Abyssal Jewels. You can get a bunch of them, you can get a bunch of flat damage, any element, physical, whatever you want. And there happens to be an Abyssal Gear package that really amplifies the effectiveness of an Abyssal Jewel route. You can truly go off the deep end with things like the Belt, Darkness Enthroned, Tomb Fist, very niche, interesting gloves that can be used. The unique jewel's actually pretty good for melee. Light Poacher, I mentioned before, physical gained as extra. You can get an absolute truckload of it here. The boots, bubonic right there, and then even the body armor, which is very expensive if you have the 3 abyssal slot version, but not the 2. It's still pretty cheap. So if you happen to be at all familiar with the Blind Prophet Ascendancy, you probably can already smell what I'm cooking here. We have a weapon, highly specialized, with scaling issues, scaling advantages, happen to have terrible crit chance baseline. Boom, base critical strike chance with attacks is 12%. Completely solved right there. We have no more return projectile support, Vengeance Cascade effectively back, Nimbus Light, projectiles have a 50% chance to return to you, all 10 of them, and even more after they have a chance to split, fired at random directions. We got the count for it. no problem there. We have shapeless. We're using a sword. We can't use a dagger, we can't use a claw, we can't get Nightblade, we can't get elusive generally. Well, it just happens to be gifted here. A superior version of it, with even faster movement speed and less chance to get hit on average. And then, for whatever reason, we have lightless. 5% max life and mana per abyssal jewel affecting you. And at the current time with the build, I think I have 16 abyss jewels. So you can probably imagine how I felt when I took that dusty, not a good ascendancy, scuffed build, Vaal Lightning Strike, no Nimbus, return projectiles, use a sword, abyssal jewels, where's the synergy? There's no real good synergies with this build, and I give it the blind prophet treatment, and this is what comes out the other side. That's pretty cool. Real quick rundown on some of the pros for this build over, say, Lightning Strike or bow builds in particular. A friendly reminder that melee now get Tinctures. They're incredibly powerful even with no investment, especially Prismatic Tincture for an elemental build with the suffix for weapon elemental damage penetration. Even fairly well rolled, nothing super special, no quality. It's evidently a third of my damage. Another major pro is less competition with gear. We're not using conventional build. I like running things that are slightly off meta. The fact we're using swords is going to work out really well for me, I think, because we're not going to have to compete with all those crazy claw and bow weapons, cluster jewels. You know how expensive those cluster jewels can get. And then with the full abyssal package, this is very common gear that drops from the abyssal bosses. Easy content early on, even as early as day one. I'm not expecting really any of this gear to be expensive. Searching Eye, Murderous Eye, Hypnotic Eye, so many different jewels, still good for the build, and so many different ways you can mix and match, combine them, maybe even 5 or 6 modded. This gear looks like it could be scaled even better than what I have listed here, and I really don't expect it to cost very much quite early on. I'd mentioned earlier that I league started as Explosive Concoction in that league, and that is when I discovered the wonder of Vaal Smite plus Innervate, and in fact, you can even throw Bone Chill on there. Just look at this link and how much power this gives for a short duration. It does in fact work even with Bone Chill. You can link up your Vaal Smite with added cold damage, cold conversion through the cold mastery, and do enough damage to minimum chill any enemy in the game as to take full advantage of bone chill from chills from any source. As a reminder, this definitely deserves its own line. Fourth major pro, Fury Valve is very good for the build. I didn't actually use it before. I've never even played with it before. Very much looking forward to it based on the testimony of so many other players. And to be fair, for bossing or what have you, Yoke of Suffering is a little bit better, but for anything map related, this is going to be pretty insane. The fifth pro in favor of Frostblades over Lightning Strike especially, or Lightning Arrow for that matter, is conversion. Lightning Strike converts 50% of physical damage to lightning damage, same for Lightning Arrow, and the same for a lot of other skill gems baked in. However, Frostblades converts 60%. Why is this important? Well, it's very easy to get the remaining 40% from the mastery, but it doesn't work if you only convert 50 to begin with, and this has some ramifications for, physical reflect, or just maximizing the damage overall. And what this really does is it pigeonholes you into having to craft your way to the remaining conversion on gloves. And don't get me wrong, gloves are rare gloves with conversion, with Eldritch implicit, make for some of the most powerful gloves in the game, quite often are the very best gloves in the end, but they're very expensive to make, and quite often to get them early, you're going to have some pretty scuffed gloves, not taking advantage of some of the really, really powerful but niche, unique gloves that exist for certain builds, especially this one, in the case Tomb Fist, Global Fortify, Global Rage on hit, which are both extremely difficult to achieve when you start on the shadow side of the tree. And Tomb Fist aren't the only good ones. Tanu Ahi is also an excellent pair of gloves that I intend to wear fairly early on before finishing the build. And last but not least, perhaps my favorite pro of all, the fact that this is using Shroud of the Lightless and not the expensive version means we have up to a 4-link at our disposal for the main damaging. Of course you can use a Squire, but that's not League Start friendly, and perhaps I will go Squire later on. However, you will see in the final version of the build, I don't actually use a Squire. I use a very interesting pair of gloves instead to make a pseudo 8-link, I think. However, in this case, we're going to be going with a 4-link. in the chest, and that's pretty crazy considering this build purports to do roughly 54 million DPS against Pinnacle Boss, single target, just 4-link? Really? And I probably don't need to mention the obvious. The reason why that's so good is because you don't need to 6-link or even 5-link. How much time and currency is that going to save you? So that is why I will be playing Frostblades for this Legacy of Phrecia event. Hopefully that makes sense to you. I'm quite excited, and check it out. I even went so far as to make a full-blown leveling path of building, which will be linked in the description of the video as usual. It comes with loadouts for the early leveling portion with Cobra Lash to late leveling with a different sword, a very unique, very common sword, which I think some of you guys will like, and then early endgame with Abyssal Gear. That transition will be fun, and then a late endgame version with Headhunter to top things off. And where we go from there, I don't know, I don't care. Well, it's only 1 month long after all, so maybe nothing, but anyway, it's gonna be a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoy me. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next video.